You ever feel like you've been 5 steps ahead, but everyone acted like you were the one who didn't get it? Like your insight was too sharp, too deep, too different for people to handle. So instead of listening, they laughed, ignored, or tried to humble you. Guess what? That moment you've been waiting for, the one where everything flips, it's here. And not just for revenge, but for recognition. Because what they once called too much is now being seen for what it really is: brilliance. And not just regular brilliance, your kind of brilliance. Rare, raw, unteachable. They couldn't see it before because your light was exposing their shadows. But now they're the ones blinking in the glow of everything you've always been. Get ready. The world's finally catching up to what you've known all along. You weren't out of place. You were ahead of your time. The kind of mind that sees what others overlook has often walked through seasons of isolation before admiration arrives. That moment has come. What once drew smirks and sideways glances is now being re-examined under a very different light, and what's unfolding is equal parts revelation and regret. Behind closed doors and in hushed conversations, the very individuals who once dismissed every suggestion, brushed off every insight, and minimized every gut feeling, are scrambling to rewrite the narrative. Not because they've suddenly become more insightful, but because the truth they tried to deny is now too loud to ignore. They used to scoff at every what if, waving it off like static on a screen. It made them uncomfortable to admit they couldn't keep up with a thought process that didn't move in straight lines. They weren't equipped to understand the kind of mind that doesn't just observe the moment, but calculates what lies 5 steps ahead. So they mocked it, categorized it, dismissed it, not because it was wrong, but because it was unfamiliar. And unfamiliar scares people who find safety in sameness. But now that the consequences have arrived like late guests to a party they tried to avoid, those same voices are softening. The labels they gave, difficult, distant, overcomplicated, are unraveling fast. In their place, silent admiration, private apologies, internal re-evaluations, and maybe even a few late-night realizations that the person they once ignored was, in fact, the only one seeing clearly all along. It's always been more than intellect. It's perception at a level that can't be taught. It's the unspoken awareness that picks up on the invisible shifts in energy, the unaligned motivations behind polished words, the quiet tension under a smile. Others missed it because they relied only on what could be explained. But this kind of awareness doesn't live in logic alone. It lives in the spaces in between, in the instincts that sense a storm before the clouds even form. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. So when the stories start changing, when people circle back with new tones in their voices, it's not coincidence, it's confirmation. Not just of your insight, but of your design. What once felt like rejection was simply the delay before recognition. And now that recognition is arriving like a tide that can't be stopped, some minds simply arrive before the world is ready to receive them. And when truth walks ahead of the crowd, it's often met with side eyes, scoffs, and accusations of being too intense, too complicated, or too serious. What was called negativity was really a form of early clarity. What looked like overanalysis was actually surgical precision of thought. And now the same people who once dismissed every word are sitting with a discomfort they can't shake. It's not just regret, it's awakening. What's happening now isn't casual reflection, it's internal reckoning. The people who once tuned out your voice are revisiting the very moments they chose to ignore it. They're replaying conversations they brushed off, recommendations they buried, observations they laughed away. But that laughter doesn't land the same anymore. Because now the very outcomes you spoke about have materialized. And with every new realization, another layer of shame peels back. Quiet embarrassment has begun to ripple through boardrooms, friend circles, and dinner tables. Not the kind where people pretend they don't remember what they said, but the kind that keeps them up at night, realizing how loudly they missed the mark. That unease is only growing, because this isn't just about one misjudged moment. It's about a pattern, and that pattern is unraveling fast. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. Some are already rehearsing what they'll say when they cross paths with you again. The ones who once challenged every insight are finding themselves echoing your words in rooms they never wanted to give you credit in. Others are opening up in private about how they see you now. Wise, intuitive, forward-thinking. Traits they once mocked out of fear or pride. And what's coming next is rare. Accountability that won't stay hidden. People are preparing to make amends not in secrecy, but out in the open. Apologies are going to show up in public praise, in unexpected acknowledgements, in leadership suddenly recognizing your worth after seasons of neglect. They're realizing you weren't an obstacle. They were just unready for the kind of insight you carry. Even in personal spaces, healing is knocking. Conversations once filled with resistance will turn into confessions. Long overdue validations are on their way, not to inflate your ego, but to restore the truth about your presence. What once made others uncomfortable is now the very thing they're learning to respect. Not everyone will say it out loud, but enough of them will that the story around you shifts for good. There's a rare kind of presence that makes people nervous before it makes them grateful. It rattles the room, not because it's wrong, but because it's too far ahead. And now, the very voices that once tried to shut it down are circling back, not only to apologize for misjudging your insight, but for the way they handled you when you dared to express it. These are not empty gestures. These are the kind of reckonings that come after someone has ignored the signs for too long and finally realizes the cost. What's beginning isn't just redemption, it's redefinition. This isn't about someone simply admitting you had a point. It's deeper. They're starting to acknowledge that the way you think isn't common, and it isn't easy to replace. For years, your ability to see patterns before they took shape, your hesitance in jumping to conclusions, your resistance to shallow praise. These were misunderstood as caution or pessimism. But now, the contrast is undeniable. While others rushed toward false clarity, you held steady in the fog. And that steadiness is finally being recognized for what it is: brilliance in motion. There's a quiet shift happening in how your name is spoken, no longer attached to whispers of being too much, too skeptical, or too intense. Instead, people are realizing that what once felt sharp was simply accurate. What they brushed off as hesitation was your unwillingness to be careless with truth. And slowly, your reputation is being rebuilt, not from apologies alone, but from the acknowledgement that your way of seeing has depth they never took time to understand. Influence doesn't always arrive with fanfare. It grows in value as those who resisted it begin to seek it out. Conversations are shifting. Invitations are increasing. Decisions are now being delayed until you weigh in. And the same rooms where your thoughts were once dismissed are now becoming places where your guidance shapes direction. What's more extraordinary is the new level of respect forming, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it through consistency. People are beginning to realize that accuracy at your level requires something far more complex than luck or random intuition. It requires a layered mind, a trained eye, a rare combination of foresight, emotional intelligence, and discipline. That's not common sense. That's something else entirely. And though they may not have the language to define what makes your perception so precise, one word keeps coming to their minds: genius. Not the textbook kind, not the kind with awards or plaques, the kind that operates in silence, noticing what's off long before it becomes obvious. The kind that reads undercurrents others don't even know exist. The kind that doesn't just react, it anticipates. And now, the truth is settling in. What once made you hard to understand is exactly what makes you invaluable. There are individuals who carry a form of knowing that doesn't come from books or noise. It comes from observation, from stillness, from paying attention to what others skip past. And when that kind of awareness starts proving itself over time, something begins to shift. Slowly at first. A nod here, a pause there. But it builds. First, people start admitting you were right. Once, then again. Then they start connecting the dots and realize it wasn't luck. It was consistency, not occasional accuracy, but a sharpened instinct they never knew how to respect. Until now. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. This is not just the undoing of misjudgment. It's a rewriting of perception. People who once accused you of being too sensitive or too intense are realizing they were measuring you with the wrong tools. What they called too much was actually a depth they didn't know how to meet. What they thought was detachment was really discernment. And now the tables have turned, not with bitterness, but with clarity. The shift isn't subtle anymore. It's unfolding in real time, and it's undeniable. The recognition isn't coming in grand declarations at first. It's showing up in subtle behaviors. Their tone when you speak has changed. They stay quieter when you start talking. They track your thoughts more carefully. They echo your phrasing, quote your earlier points, linger longer after you share. You start seeing it in the way they ask you for clarity before they move forward. Suddenly, your insight is no longer questioned. It's requested. Soon, second-hand praise begins making its way to you. The kind you didn't chase. Stories of your name being mentioned in rooms you weren't invited to, tied to wisdom you offered long before anyone else saw it. The same ones who used to downplay your contributions are now presenting them like revelations. And just when you think you've seen it all, it happens. Direct acknowledgement. They look you in the eye, not to debate, but to thank. They say the words you once longed to hear, now without prompting. Not just, "You were right, but I should have known you saw something I didn't." And those moments, they're not just vindications, they're confirmations, proof that what once set you apart is now drawing others toward you. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. This isn't just about being recognized, it's about being seen accurately for the first time. What was once ridiculed is now being carefully studied. The same lens they tried to distort your character through is now revealing just how precise, intuitive, and essential your presence truly is. There are seasons when being ahead of your time feels more like exile than honor, when the very clarity you bring unsettles the room instead of elevating it. But that season is closing. What's emerging now isn't just a nod to your insight, it's a shift in the atmosphere around you. The positioning is changing. The energy is recalibrating. You're no longer standing at the edge trying to be heard. The room is now turning to face you, recognizing that your view was never just a perspective. It was a compass. This isn't just about a few individuals finally admitting you were right. It's a structural change in how entire spaces are starting to function. Places that once operated as if your presence was optional are now adjusting their rhythm to include your voice. Spaces that once moved forward without you are circling back, recognizing the cost of leaving out what turned out to be the most grounded input. This is more than respect, it's integration. And what's remarkable is how wide the shift is spreading. Teams, networks, and groups that used to move with blind momentum are slowing down to ask for your clarity before they act. The roles are flipping. The silence that used to follow your warnings has been replaced by attention, follow-up questions, and careful listening. The air feels different when you speak now, and that's because people have started realizing that ignoring depth only leads to unnecessary damage. No longer viewed as a skeptic or a contrarian, you're becoming what you always were: a strategist, a safeguard, a pattern reader in a world that too often mistakes chaos for progress. Communities that overlook that kind of presence tend to fall into loops, chasing approval, trusting noise, misreading signs. But communities that embrace such guidance, they build stronger foundations, they stop repeating avoidable failures, they grow in ways that actually last. And this transformation in how you're seen, it comes with new freedoms. You won't have to fight to be understood anymore. Your input will be requested before the storm hits, not after it passes. You'll find yourself in circles where your clarity is not just welcomed, but expected. That shift from being too much to being essential will feel surreal at first, but it's real, and it's earned. Those who once deflected your observations are now depending on them, not as a last resort, but as the starting point. The change isn't temporary, it's structural. You're stepping into a new chapter, not as the outsider with insight, but as the one who was built for the center all along. Some people carry a perspective that was never meant to blend in. It was meant to guide. For far too long, that perspective was kept in the background, dimmed to avoid friction, softened to maintain peace. But it was never meant to stay hidden. That insight, that precision, that ability to see what others ignore, it was designed to take up space. And now, the shift is undeniable. The role that once felt forced into silence is stepping into its rightful place as a voice that shapes direction, not one that gets left out of the room. What's unfolding now is more than overdue validation. It's a return to alignment. The people who once side-eyed your questions are beginning to understand that those questions weren't disruptions. They were shields. What they used to see as hesitation was actually your ability to detect instability long before others caught on. It was never about being skeptical for the sake of it. It was about protecting people from the consequences they refused to imagine. And now, stories are moving faster than introductions. Your name is being carried into conversations you've never entered. The version of you that was once distorted by misunderstanding is being replaced with something far more accurate. Someone known not for being loud, but for being consistently right. Your track record is now its own form of advocacy. You don't have to prove your worth anymore. People are doing it for you. This ripple effect is changing everything. Doors that once remained shut are opening with ease. The hesitation that once met your name is being replaced with curiosity and respect. New roles, new invitations, new connections are showing up. Not because you've changed, but because the truth about you finally caught up to the narrative. What was once seen as resistance is now being understood as foresight. What once cost you opportunities is now the reason they're finding you. But here's what they didn't expect, what it would feel like to finally see the full picture. The regret isn't shallow, it cuts deep. Because this isn't just about missing the mark. It's about realizing they actively worked against someone who was trying to help them avoid harm. The laughter they once used to mask discomfort now rings hollow in their memory. They're replaying the exact moments when they chose pride over perspective, convenience over wisdom. It's not just recognition, it's reconciliation with the truth. And for some, that truth stings, because the very person they tried to silence is now the one they silently depend on. And the hardest part? They know it could have been different. They know it didn't have to take this long. But now that they finally see you clearly, the question isn't whether you belong. The question is how they ever thought you didn't. Some lessons hit harder not because the outcome was wrong, but because the truth had been right in front of them the whole time, and they ignored it. What stings isn't just the mistake. It's the realization that the very person they dismissed was the one offering clarity all along. The discomfort they're feeling now runs deep. Not from the situation itself, but from having to face the limits of their own perspective. And those who were loudest in their resistance, they're feeling the weight of it the most. This discomfort is no accident. It's proportionate to their efforts to discredit you. The ones who insisted you were off base, who tried to make you doubt your own observations, who made you question your sensitivity instead of reflecting on their own avoidance, they're sitting in that tension now. And here's where the shift becomes personal. Now, there's a choice to meet that discomfort with retaliation or with the kind of maturity they never extended to you. You could demand correction, spotlight their regrets, ask them to pay penance for every word they used to silence you. Or you could embody the very difference that sets your insight apart from theirs, discernment paired with mercy. Acknowledging their missteps doesn't mean brushing off the damage. It doesn't require pretending that it didn't affect you. The real strength lies in recognizing what's behind their regret. Not just guilt, but growth. They're being reshaped by the consequences of their dismissal. They're learning, slowly, what it means to overlook the one voice that could have helped them avoid the very fallout they now sit in. Your response in this moment becomes part of that learning. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. This isn't just a confirmation of your ability to spot outcomes, it's proof that your wisdom extends far beyond what's observable. It includes the grace to understand human nature, the capacity to withhold judgment, and the foresight to invest in future peace rather than cling to past wounds. Holding space for those who once misjudged you doesn't make you weak. It reveals just how rooted your insight truly is. The season that once required you to stand in the margins, misunderstood and mischaracterized, is ending. In its place comes a chapter where your gifts are not just acknowledged, but actively sought out, where your voice shifts from the background to the center, where being too much becomes exactly the measure needed to move things forward. What's happening now isn't just personal, it's foundational. A new identity is forming around you, one where your vision isn't just tolerated, it's trusted. Some voices were never meant to blend into the background. They were always meant to guide, to anchor, to reveal what others missed. And now, that role is expanding in a way that can no longer be ignored. The turning point is here. The atmosphere around you is shifting, not just in perception, but in responsibility. The questions are changing. People are no longer asking if your insights matter. They're asking how they ever got by without them. And with that comes both trust and a higher standard. More eyes are turning toward you. More choices will be shaped by your perspective. Your words will now echo longer in the spaces they reach, not because you speak louder, but because people finally know to listen. And with that shift comes freedom. There's no longer a need to downplay what you see. No pressure to dilute the truth for comfort's sake. The discomfort no longer belongs to you. It belongs to those who are learning how to grow from what you've already learned to live with. Make your impact eternal. Join now and be a light in someone's darkness. What once felt like exile is becoming elevation. The same spaces that once made you question your belonging are becoming the places where your presence is most protected. The same people who once hesitated at your warnings are now leaning into your wisdom without resistance. This isn't about praise, it's about alignment. Your insights aren't just being acknowledged, they're being positioned where they can guide the collective forward. That's what real recognition looks like, and it's long overdue. And this is just the first spark. What happens when a voice that's always seen the long view is finally empowered to speak without restraint? New possibilities, unexpected roles, conversations you never thought you'd be invited into, now waiting for your input. Those who once overlooked you are now making space. Those who once misunderstood are now advocating on your behalf. The momentum is growing, and it's being fueled by your integrity. Because what's being honored now isn't just accuracy, it's endurance. The quiet strength you held when your perspective was laughed off. The patience you carried when the world wasn't ready for your truth. That energy didn't go unnoticed. It was simply waiting for the right season to be valued. And that season has arrived. This recognition isn't just healing old wounds, it's reshaping how people define leadership, clarity, and purpose. And your journey is becoming proof of what it means to hold vision, even when it's unpopular. You've shown them what steady looks like, what clear looks like, what needed looks like. And now, the very places that once resisted your guidance are being transformed by it. This isn't just your redemption, it's a community's awakening. Your name is being restored. Your insight is becoming legacy. The future isn't just open, it's calling for you by name.